My name is Skye Kukoski-Moore. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the CEO of Children and Young People with Disability Australia, or CYDA. Before we get any further underway, a couple of housekeeping notes. Toilets can be found down the hallway past the lifts, including accessible toilets. So when you exit this room, head to your left and then head to your right and you'll see them there. In the event of a fire, go the same way you would to find the bathrooms, and the fire escape is along that same wall. One of CYDA's staff members, Liz, who's here in the front row wearing a blue and grey dress, is our Safety and Wellbeing Officer today. Liz is available if you need to step out, or if you need to debrief from any of the content, or if you need to raise any safety or wellbeing concerns. You're also welcome to stand and move around the room as you need throughout this morning. It's really important to us that you feel comfortable here today. We are also filming the event today, and we have a roaming photographer. Please let one of our CYDA staff know we're all wearing a name tag if you have any concerns about this, or if you'd prefer not to be in a photo. A note on Auslan. We did make a booking for Auslan a number of weeks ago, but unfortunately, due to undersupply and high demand at the moment, our interpreters needed to prioritise another event this morning, but we will be captioning the video of today, and we'll also be creating Auslan versions of the resources that you see. Okay, so to officially start today's proceedings, I'd like to introduce Petiola Wilson. Petiola works across diverse sectors to deliver impactful cultural engagement grounded in truth-telling, empowerment, and connection to country. He welcomes respectful collaborations and opportunities to build stronger, more inclusive communities through culture, education, and conversation. Petiola is a descendant of the Ngarrindjeri and Kaurna nations, and I'd like to hand over to him to lead a welcome to country. Thank you, Petiola.
So we say, Yukara Yakara Minya Yukara Yakara's Man Pundi Dala Manesha Kana Yauta, Nainari Petiola Wilson, Ngarrindjeri Kana Naranga, and Tongan Mirna. So Nawangandi means what I'm saying is brothers and sisters, little brothers and sisters. I meet in Greechy on the lands of the Kaurna people. When I say Nainari, it means my name is Petiola Wilson. I'm lucky and privileged enough to represent the Ngarrindjeri, the Kaurna, Naranga, and the Tongan communities. So that's why I say Mirna. I don't say person or individual, or I don't say man. I just say I represent us all along, all of us at once. Today's very significant to me because I was just speaking to Skye and her team on the way out. I've just left the Department of Education after 15 years. I have a daughter that attends a special school, the Grove Education Centre, and we've had to work through the diverse system of the Department of Education because they just didn't know. And I didn't like how they kept saying that we need to change so that so you're only here less times, or we need to adapt your timetable so that it's not overwhelming for you. The schools weren't actually changing for her. It was like reverse. It's like we had to change our lifestyle and what we were doing. At the time I was working full-time and had a really good job through the Department of Child Protection and Aboriginal Family Support Services. They didn't realise the effect it had on me. So I was like actually cutting my time short and then going to work late, dropping her off late, trying to do integrated programs, but instead of the actual Department of Education changing her timetable to best suit her instead of us responding to them. And I think that's why I went over to the Department of Education. Went in quiet, went in slowly, learnt my JP, slowly moved my way up. Now I do, well, for the last about 5-6 years, I'm doing my own thing because I've been based on my experiences to give every child the best education that we can. So I work across a Category 3 schools. I don't stay at Category 7 and 6, 7 schools too long because my need is at the more high risk end of things. So I started my first 5 years at Fremont High School. Everyone said, why did you stay there for so long? Because I had a passion to actually get these kids re-engaged before they ended up in our system in the wrong manner. Because unfortunately, we're overrepresented. A lot of kids are overrepresented in our youth detention, and the reason being is because they haven't been picked up or diagnosed with their disability, whether it be severe or whether it be a minute situation. So our way of coping with it, and a lot of kids cope with it, is they sit there and be quiet in the classroom. So it's like they're not actually learning, they're not actually engaging. They're just sitting there quiet because then they're just part of being, they're absent on a role, but they're not absent and actually learning and engaging from the community. And I think that's where the education has slowly changed with our foundation classrooms and our nurture groups. And we've given that many different names, and it's been a trial and error, but it's about keeping our kids with disability in the classrooms. We're actually in an environment now. My 14-year-old daughter now, unfortunately, doesn't have friends. She doesn't have that social engagement. She doesn't have that opportunity because in our classroom, there's 8 kids, but there's only 2 that are verbal. So where did the actual Department of Education step in instead of putting them all behind the gate and locking this big gate up to keep them safe? Where did they actually give them the social skills and the engaging skills and everything else? So I was a voice straight away ages ago to say that instead of giving these kids NEPs, negotiation education plans and everything else, we need to negotiate our education strategy to actually engage these kids in schools. And I think that's where my voice was very important. I'm lucky enough to speak when you work in the Department of Education, you have line managers, which is just like Felix, those whatever zones. Then you have regional managers and state managers. I was always a voice for disability because I just always wanted these kids to be at school. Then the word got used a lot, school is respite. You've probably all heard that. And I think that's completely disgraceful to sit there and say, let your kid be unsafe, unengaged, sit there with straight back, can't even talk, doesn't even want to look or take sight of people, but that's meant to be your respite, but while your little one's sitting there in the most uncomfortable situation. And I think that's why I use I don't have to say platform or anything else like that, but I use my life skills to make sure that I did speak to a lot of our ministers and everything else like that at the time to make sure that our kids are actually engaged in school. And as parents, we don't feel vulnerable to drop our kids off at school. And now, unfortunately, I'm facing the same thing now. I've got a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a little 3-year-old, and he's struggling now. So the early intervention into schooling is really needed. But the thing with him is he now doesn't want to go to childcare because he's 3, everyone else is 4. And he goes in, he's like, so he already knows he's behind. Yes, he's not non-verbal, but he attends speech and he attends OT sessions. But he already knows he's behind everyone else. And he's already bottled and all that up. And he's trying to avoid school, and even with me engaging into schools. Then they said to me, but it's all right, he'll grow out of it. Or just let him cry and leave him. It's like, but that's not really good for him and his little mind and his little lunchbox that he holds inside. So when I go get him now, and it's only been week 2 we're in now, by the time I get him home, he explodes. And it's like, okay, because he's just bottled himself in all day to fight that world that I've just put him into, but they're not actually engaging in that, make that environment more safer for him. And it's not about changing his... I understand when you go to childcare, they want to make them independent, ready for school, but they're only 3-year-olds, and they're still learning as well. And then you add in the extra pressure of competing, so he knows he hasn't got the speech vocabulary of everyone else. He knows that it doesn't have the skills of everyone else, but you're dropping him off at school. So I can drop him off at Edge, and he just walks in, and he's a free kid. It's free play. If he doesn't want to sit down and read a book, it doesn't suit him, and he's in none of the photos because he's always off doing his own thing. But then I take him, he calls it Big Kindy, and he's expected to walk in, put his drink bottle over there, find his name, where he can't even read it yet, do you know what I mean? And we're just putting unrealistic things on him. So he just shuts down before he even walks into the kindy doors, which is a shame. So yes, we can bring in the 3-year-old programs, yes, we can get in different areas of high needs and stuff, but what are we trying to do when we advocate for our families? How are we actually engaging with the community to say, how can we make this a safe place for these kids at a younger age so they can understand that they're not up to skills to everyone else. We live in a world, unfortunately, where everyone judges what everyone else is doing. So yeah, they picked it up at a young age. So this is a journey that's not just a quick fix. When we have the children and young people's voice, and yous will do that, that's why we need yous to do that, because then yous have experienced it, we've witnessed it, I've witnessed it firsthand, but it's up to yous to be the voice for the next generation to make it comfortable for them. So I could go talk all day, but yeah, it's a very thing that really hits home. And when Kim reached out, Kim's actually is a sister-in-law of one of my friends, and it's like I was meant to be here today to talk to all of you. Yeah, it's a long journey. It doesn't get easier. A lot of people go to me. Yeah, so my 14-year-old, I got told that she would never talk. I got told that she would never stay at school full time. I got told she would never go on a taxi run. It took till she was 8 to get her in a taxi run. It took her till she was 9 till she talked. Now she goes to school and she looks forward to it. It's just that consistency. And when you have that book in front of her to show her, and if the taxi driver's not can't work that on certain days or he's sick, I just tell them to ring up and cancel. Don't ring up and go, okay, we're changing you from run 7 to run 6, and it's just too overwhelming for her. And they understand that. So sometimes it's good also to try and be over-involved in your kids' schooling, because if not, they will just get pushed to the side and just will get treated like it's respite. And I really don't like that word, because we're meant to be there, drop you off, and then go back into work. Because then it affects us as well, as carers, as parents, as service providers. It makes it harder on us as well, because then we go, oh, we're just leaving this young one, this vulnerable kid, in this situation. So yeah, sorry, I don't know, I wasn't even supposed to talk about all this, but I just, I'd rather share it all. It just means more to me. Like I'll go from here and I've got to go to, I do our corrections or something, and then I go to the Fringe opening tonight at the Art Gallery. A lot of welcomes don't mean too much, I'll be honest with you. And then when you get the ones that actually mean more, it's like you actually try to talk into your audience and understand that we're all fighting the same battle. No matter what colour, no matter where we're from, no matter how long we've been here for, we're all still fighting the same battle. So I won't shorten it as KAY. Yeah, I'll just say like children and young people. Children and young people with disability, Takatina, we say Marachwanga Kaniaotana from our Takatina, which means children and young people of Australia. Your families, on behalf of our family, we do say welcome, and we genuinely do thank you for having me here today. It means a lot, because the welcome to countries are a sense of our identity. I'm born in like 86. I should have been diagnosed autistic that long ago as well, but I just found my way through, and now my passion is youth, and that's why it's great to have a minister here for child protection that tries to hide in the back. Blair should have been here. I think I'll see Blair tomorrow, and I'll be letting him know you should be here, because it is very important that they see that this is what we're fighting for at the same time. While we're going around building these $1 million schools, where's a safe network for our families as well? So Natalia, thank you, and thank you so much for having me, Sky. All right, thank you.
Padiola, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Thank you for your generosity in sharing your personal and your family's lived experience about the impact that education can have not only on a child but on the broader family unit, particularly when it's not done well. And I love the way that you concluded by saying we're all in the same fight. And it's so heartening to see so many allies here in the room today, so thank you. Well, as a national disability representative organisation representing children and young people with disability, inclusive education is one of CYDA's key focuses. To build inclusive cultures in our schools, we need teachers who are well supported and able to provide inclusive education practices to all students who come into their classrooms. As part of today's event, we're excited to launch the South Australian Roadmap for Inclusive Education and Supporting Resources, a project that was made possible thanks to the generous support of the JFM Fund. Over the past 12 months, the SA Roadmap team committed to listening deeply to what the community, to families, students, teachers, and education stakeholders, to listening to them about what was needed in this state to truly advance inclusive education. This included establishing a co-design group, and sneak peek, we're going to get to hear from some members of that today, as well as running focus groups and surveying more than 600 students, families and teachers about what needs to happen to drive real change. By anchoring the South Australian Roadmap with the Australian Coalition for Inclusive Education's National Inclusive Education Roadmap, we now have a document that reflects national reform priorities through the voices of South Australians. We'd like to thank the members of the Australian Coalition for Inclusive Education for their guidance, collaboration and support with this project. Like all change that's worthwhile, reforming how we deliver education in South Australia won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. As those with the ability to positively influence how hundreds of thousands of students experience education, it's vital that our teachers are supported. And this brings me to our first speaker. I'd like to welcome Dr. John Brayley, as South Australia's Chief Psychiatrist, Dr. Brayley has been instrumental in promoting supported decision-making in mental health services and is a fierce advocate for promoting mental health and wellbeing. He will be speaking with us now about supporting the wellbeing of our education workforce. Welcome, Dr. Brayley.
Thank you very much, thank you, Petiola, for the welcome to country and the lived experience perspective of education. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Kaurna land. The launch of this roadmap is just so important for an inclusive education system. I'm obviously talking from a health perspective, but when I look at the topic and read the roadmap, this is a health and wellbeing plan as well as an education plan. It's a human rights plan. And therefore, having me talk about the topic of inclusion from a health perspective, I believe is relevant, but I don't have that same in-depth knowledge of the education system that you have. So, reflecting on inclusion, connection, looking after students, looking after teachers, the importance of connection on the well-being of children and future adults, and the links to autonomy and decision-making. As Sky has mentioned, supported decision-making has been a particular focus, and currently we're consulting on a new mental health and wellbeing bill. And I've taken the liberty of structuring the presentation about some of the principles and themes from that bill, not to talk about the operation of a future mental health and wellbeing bill per se, but just to talk about the principles, the values, the issues of supported decision-making and autonomy. So supported decision-making, and supported decision-making requires a connection with others. The work of peers, people who have had a lived experience as well as training, and what peers can offer. And then run through some specific principles ranging from dignity and autonomy, choice and control, compassion and kindness. I'd like to mention the potential use of a human rights analysis. The UN CRPD is just so fundamental, and all articles are critical, obviously supported decision-making, Article 12. But there is a statement in the preamble that I think is very helpful to go back to at any opportunity, where the UNCRPD says, recognising that disability is an evolving concept and disability results from the interaction between persons with impairments and attitudinal and environmental barriers that hinders their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. And in terms of those attitudinal and environmental barriers, inclusion, connection, and affirming support can break down these attitudinal environmental barriers and should start as early as possible in a person's life. An example from the past is that many years ago, when I had the role of public advocate, I was invited by Purple Orange to join a group that was providing oversight and reference for a Circles of Support in School initiative. And this initiative really illustrated the benefits, the reciprocal benefits to everyone through freely given friendship for all those involved. But purposeful steps were needed to establish those circles of support. And ideally this should be inbuilt into the way our schools, the education environment operates. More recently, I've had involvement again with the same group, about a neighbourhood circles project, looking at the benefit of connection more generally. Now, just quickly to say something about our office, we're involved in providing oversight of the Mental Health Act. We also work in terms of safety and quality of services, do inspections, investigations, unannounced inspections, and suicide prevention. Now, the first topic of supported decision making, it's being recognised very clearly in the Mental Health Act. And basically there's a statement in this draft Mental Health and Wellbeing that a decision of a person with a mental illness made using supported decision making will be taken to be a decision of the person. That's a significant recognition. Now, technically this is about people 16 years old and above, but these same principles of support and assisting people's autonomy apply regardless of age, and highlight the importance of connection and engagement in decision making for children, for young people. Having someone to talk a life decision through with, having someone beside them to give confidence so that they can express, however, through whatever communication, their will and preference. And the will and preference of a person is something that's really highlighted in Article 12 of the UN CRPD. Now, to support a person, a support person for making a decision regardless of age, could be a family member, it could be a friend. And that supporter needs to be able to respect the person's wishes, the decisions of the person they are supporting, and resist the impulse to step in to be a substitute decision maker. And this requires acknowledgement of dignity and autonomy of the person receiving support. And of course, there are times where people can't be supporters, and this comes up when family love and concern for their family member and a decision that they need to make, and have such an investment, like a decision to move out of home or whatever, that they may be better off expressing their own view and then having somebody else provide the supported decision making. So this is a comment about connection, friends, supporters. Another innovation in this draft Mental Health and Wellbeing Bill is the introduction of a peer advocate role. Now, we don't have funding for the role, but it's going to be in the legislation. So in mental health, and I'm sure in the disability sector as well, and I've seen that over many years, there's recognition of the unique value of lived experience. A peer worker who has had a lived experience of disability or marginalisation, discrimination, can walk alongside a person and be provided extra training to help a person with their navigation of the system, instilling a sense of hope in terms of what might happen in the future. And once again, it's this idea of having the connection, sitting beside a person can give them confidence, and this broad principle can apply beyond designated schemes. Those peer advocates will have the right, if this bill goes through, to be recognised in front of SACAT for their role. So that's the key issue. Now, I'd just like to go through some of the principles in the Mental Health and Wellbeing Bill, not to necessarily explain their references to CAMS, or Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, or the operation of the Act, but just the nature of the principles. So, a wellbeing of children and young people principle, namely that the health, wellbeing and autonomy of children and young people receiving mental health and wellbeing services should be promoted and supported. Health, wellbeing and autonomy. The dignity of risk principle, a principle from the disability sector that has been present for many years, that is being incorporated increasingly in mental health legislation. The mental health and neurodevelopmental principle, namely that the needs of people who experience an autism spectrum disorder or an intellectual disability must be considered when setting policy and designing mental health services that are responsive to those needs. Now, there's a bit of technical background to this. For a long time, there's been an international and national view that mental health legislation should not be used to provide involuntary care for people who have a neurodevelopmental disorder. And there's good justification for that. But people who experience a neurodevelopmental disorder may very well need to access mental health services, and those services need to be accessible and accommodating. So hence the decision and consulting, including with the Office of Autism, about the addition of a principle like that to make it clear. Then regarding the importance of connection, we've added the compassionate care principle, namely that services are designed to support care based on empathy, respect and dignity, with organisational support provided to staff delivering this care. So this is probably one of the first times that there's been an attempt to legislate for compassion. And compassion can be measured. There's been a strong focus in healthcare. It's important to separate this from paternalistic approaches in the past. For example, a reliance on sympathy. With universal human rights, everyone has the right to enjoy life and access services and housing, education on an equal basis to others, and should be able to claim those rights and not depend on those more paternalistic historical views about sympathy. But in this context, how compassion has come about in the healthcare sector is a shared awareness and desire to help, grounded in respect, dignity and equality, not just for the person who is being supported, but also for staff delivering care. Now, these ideas of compassion have come from busy emergency departments and some of those high-tech areas of healthcare which are so busy and conflicts can develop and people are feeling under pressure, and the reminder about compassion and also kindness is important. And these strategies can help with the addressing of marginalisation, exclusion and discrimination through a friendly, generous and considerate response. But it's the kindness to each other, and I mentioned EDs, but this care for the workforce also becomes critical. And clearly in education, the care for the teaching workforce, with the surveys that indicate significant numbers. Like last year, one survey, up to 2/3 of teachers reporting symptoms of depression and anxiety using a scale that's commonly used in GP offices, linked with workload and linked with turnover intentions for people to go into other areas of work. Now, those core issues need to be addressed in terms of training and workload. You can't avoid that. That's really important. But also considering the culture and the compassion and kindness towards staff, students, and entire communities. Now, this is a health and wellbeing document, this roadmap, and it is also important just to be aware of what can go wrong if we don't provide the inclusion and connection. And there's been this new area of literature for the last few years about loneliness and how much of a problem loneliness can be and why we need to address it. And there are ways of doing it. So in 2023, Dr. Vivek Murthy, the former US Surgeon General, published a significant monograph about the impacts of loneliness, and using their public health calculations, and this is sort of worrying, lacking social connection can be as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And this is because of all of the biological and stress responses, psychological impacts of this. And so this is very objective. And when Vivek Murthy talked about loneliness strategies, and the Surgeon General's office at that time in the US looked at 6 pillars of social connection, which I think we're seeing here in the roadmap. But one is strengthening social infrastructure in local communities, how our communities are designed, and the institutions that bring people together. This, I think, is the question for schools and universities. Having pro-connection policies, mobilising the health sector, reforming digital environments so that they are accessible and safe for meaningful connection, and using those technologies, deepening our knowledge. But the last pillar is building a culture of inclusion, so deep within our organisations and our society. I'd just like to finish off by talking about recovery and human rights. So you'll hear about the recovery model in mental health services, and it overlaps with this. So recovery initially came out as a concept, came out of the United States through Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And they defined recovery as a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. It's quite a universal definition. And I think if you go back to the UNCRPD, this is all about overcoming attitudinal and environmental barriers as well through the application of recovery. And the 4 major dimensions of recovery are health, home, having a stable and safe place to live, purpose, meaningful daily activities, such as a job, volunteerism, creative endeavours, and community, having relationships and social networks. The inclusion at schools sets the precedent for the future adult and how those relationships will work. Lastly, I'd just like to mention something about the human rights and mental health. In our bill, human rights constantly need to be reviewed, discussed. Sometimes there can be conflicts between different persons' rights. And we thought that it was important to have a Human Rights and Coercion Reduction Committee as a statutory committee linked to the Mental Health and Wellbeing Bill. So it's there, it's out for consultation. But one of the pieces of work, we've had a non-statutory Human Rights and Coercion Reduction Committee. One of the pieces of work that we've been doing and seem to have been effective in doing is the development of a human rights analysis tool. Because you read the UNCRPD and you can agree with it, but how does that practically convert in terms of the day-to-day experience of people using services? So the human rights analysis tool has been carefully designed to link to the UNCRPD and other human rights resources, and it applies to a mental health service. So it's been used to analyse the operation of new initiatives such as the Safe Haven Cafe, a peer-run and led service, new rehabilitation services. One of those has undertaken it, and even the Community Visitor Scheme have applied the human rights analysis tool. So I think we can all express our support for human rights, but having things like a tool, so if there's a new initiative or there's a new reform or a new design, you can go back to sort of an instrument and sit around as a group, ideally with service users and providers and go through that instrument and decide are the relevant human rights being upheld, and using that as a checklist. So they're my comments from a health and mental health perspective about the work that you're all doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brayley. I so appreciated the links you were able to draw between mental health, recovery, wellbeing support, human rights, the impact that they have on people starting from a very early age all the way through school, and then finally ending with that reflection about the need for a way for us to be able to measure in a really meaningful way progress towards the realisation of human rights. So thank you again, Dr. Brayley. Well, I'd like to welcome Emma and Jerzy up next. Emma has been a part of our co-design throughout the Essay Roadmap project, contributing to the development of our new resources and helping to shape the Essay Roadmap document. Her son, Jerzy, is a passionate advocate for inclusive education. I'd like to welcome them both to share with us the importance of inclusive education.
Hi.
Just stand back a tiny bit.
Hi. My name is Jerzy, and this is my mum, Emma. Before I start, we would like to acknowledge that we meet today on Kaurna land. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and we acknowledge the sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I'm 10 years old and I have just started Year 5. I have cerebral palsy and complex health needs that affect my heart, lungs, kidneys, vision and muscle tone. I am also a kid. I love playing with my friends, collecting Pokemon cards and playing my Nintendo Switch. I am really interested in Australian and American politics, both current and historical. I am also passionate about disability advocacy, which is why I am here today. I want to talk to you about what inclusion has looked like for me at school and what I hope school can look like for other kids with a disability in the future. When inclusion is normal, everyone belongs. I've been at school for 5 years now. During this time, I have faced barriers and challenges, and not all of my experiences at school have been inclusive. But I have also had incredible support. I have had teachers and education support officers who have gone above and beyond to make sure I am included. And because of them, I have been able to take part in school life in meaningful ways. Today, I want to focus on those positive experiences and what they show us about what inclusion can look like when it's done well. Last year was a big year for me. One of my most surprising things was art. Because I have fine motor challenges, art used to be one of my least favourite subjects. This changed when my art teacher, Miss Tewart, started teaching me about political art and the power of art to communicate ideas. She introduced me to political comics, and I love the humour and sarcasm. It connected straight away with my interest in politics and opened up a whole new world for me. I used a light box to create political artworks. One of my first portraits was of Adam Band, a political figure I admire. I also created art in the style of The Simpsons, including a piece with a nuclear power plant and Peter Dutton. My artwork was exhibited at the Royal Adelaide show. My friends and family got to see it there. And it also meant my parents had to take me to the show, which was a win for me. Art went from being my least favourite subject to my favourite subject. My parents were shocked when I started drawing at home, and they were really supportive. Because of that, my mum heard about the Paper Cuts Comic Festival and took me to Market Day at the town hall. There were lots of different comic creators, but I was especially drawn to the political comics. This is where I met Sam Woolman, a writer and illustrator who is also a unionist and is now one of my favourite artists. I showed him my artwork and we talked about art and politics, and he signed my book. Everyone at Market Day was really kind. The stallholders, the artists and the people who came along all made me feel welcome. We had a great day and it felt like I had found a whole new community that I belonged to. Sport has also been an important part of my school experience. Outside of school, I attend all abilities football clinics and Miracle League baseball. They are fun, but we never get to play a proper game. Last year, my school started T-ball for my year level and I was able to play. I love playing with kids from my school, even though we did not win a game. I am really looking forward to playing again this year. At Athletics Day, I am always included. I'm a determined runner. I am always given the option to run a shorter distance, but I choose to run the full race. From reception onwards, older students have joined me near the end of the race, so I'm not finishing alone. They run with me and encourage me to keep going. When the kids on the sidelines cheer and shout, "Go Jerzy," it makes me feel really good. Last year, my school put on a production of Shrek. I played one of the Lost Boys. I love being on stage, singing and dancing with my friends, and I also enjoyed missing a few days of class for rehearsals. Mr. T and other education support officers supported me during rehearsals and performances. When we were waiting to go on stage, Mr. T helped me pass the time by talking with me about politics, Pokemon, and other things I am interested in. I know I can rely on him and I feel safe when I am supported by people who know me. I am already looking forward to the next school production in 2027. I also went on an overnight school camp for the first time last year. I was really nervous because I had never slipped away from my parents before. Knowing that Mr. T and other education support officers were there to support me helped me feel safe. I stayed in a room with my best friend. We talked well past midnight and it was excellent. My parents did not sleep very well. They said the house was too quiet. All of these experiences matter to me. I want to be included in every part of school life. I may need different supports and adjustments, but when those supports are in place, I can do my best. When I finish school, I plan to go to university, study law, and then get into politics. Now my mum is going to talk about her experience as a parent and as a co-designer in the SA Roadmap to Inclusive Education project.
It's a bit hard coming after that, isn't it? So everything that Jerzy's just shared happened because of the expertise, planning, time, commitment of teachers and education support officers. These outcomes were not accidental. Jerzy's art teacher did more than adapt a task. She engaged Jerzy by connecting art to his interest in politics, using that as a way to build his confidence and participation. She worked with him, problem-solved alongside him, and created a space for his strengths. When they were working out how the light box would fit with Jerzy's modified chair, it was one of Jerzy's classmates who suggested how to rearrange the space to make it accessible. This is inclusion. Without the assistance of education support officers, Jerzy would not have been able to take part in the school musical. With their help, he stood on stage with his peers, met older students from high school, and came home from rehearsals visibly taller and more confident. At PE, Jerzy's physiotherapist observed his class last year and told us it was the best example of inclusive practice she had seen in any school all year. That didn't happen by chance. It came from a teacher who understood Jerzy's abilities and how to adjust lessons so he could participate fully. We are extremely grateful for the support Jerzy received at camp. He was nervous about going, but knowing that his trusted education support officer would be there gave him reassurance and confidence. Someone who knew him well, who could be discreet with personal care, keep him safe, encourage independence and anticipate challenges before they became problems. Jerzy came home from camp with a new confidence, even though he made it very clear to us that he will not be sleeping anywhere else until next year's camp. We need to be celebrating the work of educators like Jerzy's art teacher and education support officer, the planning, creativity and care that enabled Jerzy to participate fully in school life should not be invisible or treated as extra. These are practices that make inclusive education work, and they are actions that we need to value, recognise and also resource. When we acknowledge and support this work, we are not only improving outcomes for students, we're also supporting teacher wellbeing, professional pride and workforce retention. We often say that it takes a village to raise a child. When your child has a disability and complex health needs, it can feel like it takes the entire city of Adelaide. As a parent of a child with a disability and health needs, our life includes hospitals, specialists, allied health supports and the NDIS. At school, Jerzy has a number of health management plans, an oral eating and drinking plan and a personalised learning plan. School is a huge part of our village. I want to work with teachers, education support officers and school leaders. I respect their expertise. I know that they are managing hundreds of students and not just mine. That is why being invited to participate as a parent co-designer in the SA Roadmap to Inclusive Education project with CYDA was so meaningful. The co-design process was thoughtful, accessible and respectful. Students, families, teachers and education professionals were treated as equals. Lived experience was valued, not tokenised. As a part of the roadmap, we were also able to learn from survey responses shared by students, families and educators. Some of these experiences were heartbreaking. Many were hopeful. All of them pointed to the same goal. We all want school communities that are inclusive, with support scaffolded at every level to ensure inclusion is meaningful and sustainable. Importantly, the roadmap does not just describe what needs to change. It provides practical resources for students, educators and families, recognising that inclusion works best when everyone is supported and working together. The roadmap does not position inclusion as an extra task. It positions inclusion as a way forward, a flexible, responsible and culturally safe system that supports every learner, a system that values diversity, celebrates strengths and builds empathy and connection across school communities. Importantly, it recognises teacher wellbeing. When teachers are supported, trained and given time to plan, inclusion becomes sustainable. Burnout reduces, job satisfaction increases and quality educators stay. Inclusive education is not just good for students with disability, it benefits every student. It strengthens school culture. Children learn inclusion by living it every day. The roadmap calls for stronger preparation in inclusive education during teacher training, better support and recognition for education support officers, and increased representation of educators with disability in our schools. It embeds student voice, nothing about us without us. It recognises that inclusive education is not a single policy or a short-term reform. It's an ongoing cultural shift that grows through partnership, dialogue and shared responsibility. I'd also like to take a moment to sincerely thank Lauren and Kim for their incredible work leading this project. The care, preparation and integrity they brought to the co-design process set the standard for how inclusive work should be done. From accessible information to thoughtful facilitation and the way lived experience was centred, They created a space where every voice mattered. The strength of this roadmap reflects their leadership. As a parent, I focus on 3 things when I send my child to school: that he is safe, that he is happy, and that he has the support he needs to thrive. Collaboration is key. Open communication matters and mutual respect matters. Teachers are already doing extraordinary work, often with limited time and resources. Imagine what is possible when they're properly supported and valued. Jerzy's teachers and education support officers are not exceptions. They're examples of what inclusion can look like when systems support people to do their jobs well. That is what this roadmap offers, a way forward that supports educators, uplifts students and strengthens our communities. I'm just going to get Jerzy to finish off now.
I often tell my parents that if I was given the choice to take my disability away, I would not choose it. My disability is a part of who I am. What I would change is how communities understand disability and the limits that are placed on people with a disability. Equity is not about everyone getting the same thing. It is about everyone getting what they need. Accessible education is not a privilege, it is a right. When inclusion is normal at school, it helps me build the skills, confidence and independence I will need for a university and a career in politics. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. I knew that was going to be good, but Jerzy and Emma, that was fantastic. Thank you. Jerzy, I feel like there might be a few people lining up for your autograph because we didn't realise when we came in today that we're with the future Prime Minister of Australia, so thank you. It would be a good thing for the country if you do go down that political career route, so thank you. And Emma, thank you so much for sharing your reflections about why inclusive education is so important. You speak so eloquently about it. It's been such a privilege to have you working with us on this project, so thank you. Next, I'd like to welcome our final speaker for this morning, Dr. Peter Walker from Flinders University. Peter works in the College of Education, Psychology and Social Work, lecturing in inclusive education. Motivated by the ongoing growth in inclusive education, Peter has delivered a TED Talk on the topic and is passionate about supporting reform to create more inclusive education systems and a more inclusive society. Thank you, Peter.
Oh man, having me follow Jerzy, that's mean. Hi everyone, it's an honour to be on beautiful Ghana land today to help launch CYDA's roadmap to an inclusive education system in South Australia. The recent Disability Royal Commission showed that the experiences of students with disabilities and their families are fraught when it comes to inclusive education. Half of the Commission recommended the structural removal of segregation by 2050. The other half recommended the co-location of special schools with mainstream schools. Now, co-location was the focus of my doctorate, which looked specifically at the South Australian context. And one thing that I can say is co-location does not guarantee inclusion. In fact, what I would say is that it is guaranteeing a refinancing and a resustaining of segregation. Let's start with a thought exercise. Imagine that you are an Australian family looking to catch, let's call it Uber schooling, to the destination inclusive education. You'd likely be told no problems by the driver. After all, school websites of plenty declare our schools to be inherently inclusive. We even have schools with inclusive units for those students with disabilities. Now, being told that you are heading to inclusion is not the worry. You can have your bottle of water, maybe Talking Heads, Road to Nowhere playing on the radio. But at the end of the trip, where will you arrive? integration, a tailored learning program, segregated schooling. There's a good argument to be made, of course, that inclusion is not actually a destination, it's the journey. Buckle up. Inclusive experiences do exist. We've just heard some great ones there from Jerzy. They have to, right? Where does this research come from that shows inclusion is beneficial to learners and to teachers? It comes from schools, but for families it's often still a lottery, often dependent on that right teacher, that right principle, that right attitude. Some believe that it takes the right kind of teacher to teach students with disabilities. Inclusion asks us to consider, well, what if all teachers were that right kind of teacher? I don't want to sound too Pollyanna-ish, but what if? A special setting teacher in CYDA's focus group commented, if places like ours sort of didn't exist, what it would do to families? I feel like the families would be ostracised if their children remain mainstream. I just don't know what they would do to families' mental health. As a previous special school principal, I've seen those families looking to enrol, having endured horrible experiences in their local mainstream school. But again, what if all teachers were the right kind of teacher? What if all schools were the right kind of schools? If we're giving parents a choice of a unwelcoming mainstream or a special school, is that actually choice? We have some South Australian schools that are focused on inclusion, getting better at inclusion. They are welcoming, they are skilled, and they invest time and resources in getting education right for all of their students. I know one school, kind of whispered by frazzled parents of children with disabilities, who quickly became flooded with sudden enrolments, turning them into a kind of a pseudo special education setting. And the teachers were like, hang on, wait, what just happened? Families want inclusion. They will travel to get it, but they shouldn't have to. The local school should be the inclusive school. Inclusion must be a shared intent, and its policy, its frameworks, it's a roadmap that will get us there. In launching CYDA's roadmap today, we might deduce that there was no plan prior to this. But, could no plan be a plan? If you don't explicitly plan for inclusion, if you don't connect to a roadmap, say, to actualise inclusion, then aren't you planning not to have inclusion? The Royal Commission has challenged us to develop a roadmap because segregation has educational, social and economic consequences. Once upon a time, we might have been able to say that those consequences were unintended, but not anymore. We know where segregation takes us. If the sensitivities of teachers in segregated settings become more important to us than the human rights of children and young people in our schools, then we've mistaken who schools are for and our combined sense of purpose. Australia's Human Rights Commission, in its latest periodic review of the UNCRPD, described Australia as relying on a polished pathway where segregated housing and segregated employment begin with, you guessed it, segregated education. A polished pathway. Where did this pathway come from? Why is it polished? Who is polishing it and for what purpose? The path might start with, well, this is not the right school for her, or, well, we don't have the funding. Perhaps you'd be better off looking for a school with specialised teachers, or that school would be a much safer option. Again, if this school is framed as safe and this one unsafe, is that a real choice for parents? It ends with the increased likelihood of unemployment or underemployment, reliance on welfare and supported education, supported accommodation, and lower levels of social participation. Yes, it ends with a cost, both human and financial. It's a cost to us as a nation. The OECD, in their working paper on the social and economic rationale of inclusive education, highlighted that education inequality leads to income inequality. It's a loss of student potential. In the United States, the lack of inclusion of students with ADHD alone has been ballparked at costing at least $67 billion annually due to a loss of workforce productivity. There are also savings to be found in the removal of that pesky parallel system of segregation. Inclusion saves money for school systems. It provides money later via the eventual workforce. As the OECD report points out, many inclusive measures, much like those in CYDA's roadmap, are not costly, but they can lead to broader accessibility for all learners. Inclusion leads to poverty reduction. It leads to increased social and emotional well-being, better academic results. If only we didn't have that persistent, polished pathway. As a sidebar here, I'd like to confess that I asked AI to tell me who was doing this metaphorical polishing of the pathway. Its response was government departments, policymakers, special school sectors, and peak bodies. They branded this pathway as choice rather than a structural funnel. A structural funnel. That was worth the pint of water alone. Segregated education, can we agree, has kind of had its druthers. To quote again from CYDA's roadmap, this time a parent carer, the existence of special options gives mainstream sites an excuse to avoid inclusion. For over 50 years, we've seen special schools increase nationally in number, in size, and therefore in advocacy, in funding, whilst evidence of their effectiveness remains starkly overshadowed by the evidence for inclusion. Segregation I see as kind of like this Godzilla, this radioactive creature that does not serve us, yet we keep making it bigger and hungrier. For decades now, we've kept shoveling spades laden with money into its ever-famished mouth. Queensland recently announced the largest segregation investment in its history, 6 new special schools. In response, the Human Rights Commission simply clarified, segregated education settings result in higher rates of violence, abuse and neglect of people with disability, leading to poorer academic outcomes, reduced employment opportunities and social exclusion. That sounds like a mic drop to me. Yet Queensland steadfastly continues buying more polish for the same old pathway that leads to the same old place. This is not happenstance, this is governance. Segregation is planned for and constructed. It is sometimes advocated for under the euphemism of the full range of services. Segregation does not occur naturally. Scott Avery's doctoral research on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with disability puts forward that inclusion was culturally here long before colonialism. Again, segregation does not occur naturally nor benignly. It's not like a rainbow. In the 1939 cinematic classic, The Wizard of Oz, we are introduced to a Technicolor land paved with a yellow brick road. We don't know where this road came from. It appears as natural as the trees or the sky. In the 2025 movie, Wicked for Good, I would argue less of a classic, we see the actual brick by brick construction of this road. This movie, if you haven't seen it yet, strongly connects to concepts of inclusion and structural discrimination. It shows the building of this yellow brick road for a purpose. It's peeling back that curtain, showing us the power and the consolidation of power is never accidental. It's always planned, whether it's a yellow brick road or a polished pathway. Power is engineered. This engineering dictates who gets to remain in the centre and who gets to be dismissed to the fringes. This is not, as author Julian Barnes recently termed, the universe just doing its stuff. It's the intention of people, it's policy. It's the turning gears of system architecture. Segregation is by design. Fiona Forbes, the past president of the Australian Special Education Principals Association, once described inclusion as a utopia, an ideal that can never be reached. So what are we to take from that? That we shouldn't bother? And just don't bother setting your sat-navs, put away your Google Maps. Well, with the development of today's roadmap, CYDA have provided us with a clear way forward, inclusion by design. David Armstrong's paper, Wicked Problems in Special and Inclusive Education, articulates the complex motivations and behaviours that keep inclusion at bay. But by addressing these motivations and behaviours, we can start to pick away together at this knotty issue. As the Wizard of Oz's manufactured power is dependent on infrastructure, so is segregation. On leaving South Australian Parliament at the end of last year, ex-Education Minister Susan Close remarked that our national education system has become highly segregated, citing OECD reports. This segregation, she felt, was largely on economic lines, with only Chile, Hungary and Mexico doing worse than Australia at rounding up and consolidating disadvantaged kids into the same schools. When I read this, my mind went to the number of students with disabilities in each of these schools. How some schools are genuinely welcoming students with disabilities into their local areas and others are not. We know that gatekeeping practices exist. POED's 2017 review showed South Australia was punching above its weight in these discriminatory practices. My mind also went to the relationship between disability and poverty and how inclusive schooling can disrupt that cycle. What was Susan Close's solution for our returning to our egalitarian nature, that of Australia being the fair go country? It was doing public policy better. She called for a system response. Our current system has been seen increases in enrolment in open access, homeschooling, tailored learning, all of which might be framed as school choice or a flexible parent-driven bain-marie to solve the one-size-fits-all rigidity of mainstream. The OECD have pointed out in their report on equity, excellence and inclusiveness in education that school choice without equity considerations can lead to greater segregation. I would argue that parents don't want more things that aren't inclusion, they just want inclusive schools and they want them locally. CYDA's roadmap articulates South Australia's strong foundations well, strong foundations that we can now transform from. Our context is unique. Just before Christmas, I was at an event where I heard our State Education Minister, Blair Boyer, remark on the boldness of South Australian education. He used the language of nation-leading, forward-thinking. And we have certainly historically been viewed as an innovative state, unafraid of taking risks, embracing fresh ideas. Recently, Blair Boy pointed out, and the Minister pointed out, and I think I agree with him, this reputation seems to have resurfaced. Indeed, when we look across South Australia, we see a state which has led discussions about mobile phones in schools, the impact of social media on children. We embraced learning about and with AI as other states and territories look to insulate their schools from it. South Australia's public system created autism inclusion teacher roles, not to take kids out of classrooms, but to support and guide inclusive practice, to develop capacity in schools. So at a time when other states are considering again that polished pathway, that tired superhighway to a segregated society, South Australia is well positioned to demand something bolder. Returning to the polished pathway does not sound like forward thinking. It does not sound like future leading, at least not to any future that the Disability Royal Commission recommended. It sounds like the past. It sounds like a structural funnel. Thanks, AI. I'm not sure which academic or advocate you stole that from, but thank you. South Australia has already made a commitment towards inclusion. Today's roadmap does not alter the fact that Australia is a signatory to the UNCRPD, or that our statewide inclusion policy connects directly and explicitly to it, or that the department's recent direction statement on inclusion already highlights a commitment for all schools to value all students, to ensure their participation fully and that they feel a sense of belonging through their education. But what CYDA's roadmap does do is break down the inclusion journey into connected, manageable chunks. Many of these initial steps are cost and time efficient, yet meaningful. Here's some examples at hand. Awards for schools, celebrating inclusive successes, great for teacher recognition and wellbeing. Setting up a student inclusion reference group, valuing and utilising lived voices. Explicitly committing to the UNCRPD General Comment number 4, not letting policy omissions create ambiguity over intent or ambition. Every school capturing data to highlight and track their inclusive practice. There's an adage in education about measuring what we care about and caring about what we measure. If we care about inclusion, which we do, existing policy already articulates this, then let's measure it. It's okay if we're at the front door of our inclusion journey. Measurement and reflection generates planning and improvement. I know some schools have already commenced doing this sort of work, which is fantastic. This may also be great for teacher retention because teachers can see the differences that they're making at more than a student level, at a school level, at a community level. Yes, some schools are doing this work already, but as CYDA's roadmap directs, what if inclusion was measured by all, cared for by all, shared by all? Then that starts to look like a system approach, yeah? One student voice from a CYDA focus group remarked, "I feel more included when I can sit with my friends and I'm treated the same as everyone else." And teachers could make it easier to ask for help by offering it to everyone in the class, so I don't feel like I'm the one who needs it. That's right, inclusion is for all. I recently watched a short film, Letter to the System, that was shared by CEO of the department, Martin Westwell. In it, students asked for the system, their system, to personalise itself more to who they are as students. It's asking for the system to see them as fully human, to measure their learning as a full human, learning which is sometimes expected and planned for, and sometimes not. Kind of happy accidents, as Bob Ross might have said. When we think about this maze of spaghetti highways, accessible avenues, collaboration cul-de-sacs, and yes, polished pathways to navigate ahead of us, it's important to think of not simply what's the bold response, the brave response, the most forward-thinking response, but I would argue that we also should be considering what is the most human response. CYDA has put forward actions in their roadmap which are humanistic, which value the voice and agency of people with disabilities and their families. The actions draw from research and are aligned with the Disability Royal Commission recommendations. I commend them for their work, their advocacy, and I thank you for your time today. I'd like to end with a quote from Alice Walker, author of The Colour Purple. "Look closely at the present you are constructing. It should look like the future you are dreaming." Thank you.
Peter, what a journey you just took us on. Your use of metaphors, we had Bain Marie's, we had Godzilla, we had a yellow brick road, cul-de-sacs. Thank you. It's rare that we're able to find people who can talk about inclusive education in such a relatable way, to make it feel like it's something that is possible, because it is. So thank you so much for being here. Okay. Well, we wanted to bring everyone together for this event to start 2026 with some positive conversation and supporting our teaching workforce, who will be huge enablers of truly inclusive education systems. We hope that we've achieved this. We encourage everyone here to pick up one of our essay roadmap summary posters on the way out and to visit our webpage, which I think is behind me. Yes, it is, to visit our webpage so you can see the full version of the roadmap as well as the resources that have been co-designed. We also have at the back of the room a children's book which we produced through one of our other projects called Take Charge of Change, and we're really fortunate because with us today we have the illustrator of that children's book, Tex. So please do pick up a copy. Hi, Tex. The book is called Sophia Starts School. It was written by a person with disability and illustrated by Tex, so thank you. Well, thank you again for coming. A huge thank you to Lauren and Kim, who led this work. We wouldn't have been able to do it without you. A huge thank you to Liz, who supported her team through this project, and to Sonia, who's here today, who has helped us with a lot of the communication work that we've done around this. A huge thank you to everyone who came here today as guest speakers, to Petiola, to Dr. Brayley, to Emma and Jez, to finally Dr. Walker. We're so fortunate to have such strong allies in this space, and we're really fortunate to have so many allies in this room who gave up your time this morning to come and be with us as we launched this roadmap. Thank you, everyone. We now have some morning tea available outside, so please help yourself.